Now, you might find this hard to believe, but deep down, I'm a cheery, optimistic soul that tries to see the positives in everything. I'm all about second chances, especially when it comes to long-running TV shows that have delivered some of the most dramatic and unforgettable moments in entertainment history. And so it is with Game of Thrones' final season. So what if episode 1 was a pointless hour of filler that was so bland and boring I couldn't even think of enough material to write a review for it? Episode 2 was an irritating feminist wankfest, and episode 3 was an overblown mess that Rian Johnson my expectations right into the ground. It's okay, I told myself, we still have half the season to go, and Weiss and Benioff are talented guys who know what they're doing. The season's had its wobbles, I guess, but I'm sure episode 4 will get things right back on track. And then I watched it. The episode picks up the morning after the night before. Everyone's burning their dead from the Battle of Winterfell, and Jon gives a speech that sounds really weird, like they had to ADR his voice or something. Anyway, they all gather in the Great Hall that evening to get drunk and celebrate, and Tyrion plays a drinking game where they find out that Brienne's a virgin, so Jaime leaves to take care of it like a boss. And it's horrifying because you almost get to see Brienne naked. Then Dany tells Gendry that he's now Lord of Storm's End because he's Robert Baratheon's son, without bothering to consult with anyone or consider whether the people there would even accept him as their lord. She just blurts it out like it popped into her head at that very second. And I'm not kidding, she actually congratulates herself afterward for how smart she is. God's sake. Gendry's all happy with this, so he finds Arya and he babbles incoherently about how she's the only girl for him, and he proposes to her right there and then. Jesus Christ, mate, you slept with her like one time, and suddenly this small dumpy child is the love of your life. Why are you acting like a hormonal teenage girl? Anyway, she's not interested because she has to go and Deus Ex Arya her way through the next couple of episodes, so she totally pies him. Then Sansa sits down for a chat with the Hound, and he tells her that she was fucking stupid for not having the guts to run away with him from King's Landing like 6 seasons ago. She could have avoided all the fun she went through with Joffrey and Ramsay if she'd just listened to him, but she says it's fine because she wouldn't be who she is without it. Going for the old "our suffering makes us stronger" cliche, eh? Yeah, that might have worked better on someone who actually ended up strong. I love how Sansa talks like she's the greatest badass in Westeros, when literally everything she has was straight up given to her by other people. Every enemy she faced was killed by someone else. Every dumb situation she got herself into relied on another character to rectify. She's achieved absolutely nothing by herself, and she's literally the weakest, most useless character that Game of Thrones ever produced. God's sake. Meanwhile, all is not well in Camp Dany. She's drinking her Starbucks latte and watching everyone showering Jon with praise, and she's sad because they don't like her as much as they like him, so she leaves. Teenagers, eh? And Varys decides it's time for him to start doing things again, so he teleports in beside her to watch the whole thing with a very meaningful look. Honestly, guys, could you telegraph an upcoming betrayal from any further away? So Dany talks to Jon and she orders him to keep his parentage a secret because otherwise everyone will support his claim to the throne instead of hers. Because remember, she deserves this, and Jon needs to step aside and let her take what she's entitled to. God, I never thought it'd be possible to insert a millennial into a medieval fantasy show, but I guess Weiss and Benioff proved me wrong again. The clues were there all along, I guess. But Jon doesn't care, so he tells Arya and Sansa, who then tells Tyrion, who then tells Varys. Wow, these guys really suck at keeping secrets, eh? Anyway, the two men argue about who they should support because Varys thinks Jon would make a better ruler, and frankly I agree with him. Whereas Jon is humble, compassionate, forgiving, and beloved by the common people, Dany is arrogant, vengeful, ruthless, and increasingly fixated on winning the Iron Throne at any cost. As I said in my review of episode 2, she's becoming the very thing she once swore to destroy. But Tyrion insists on supporting Dany anyway, even though he senses Varys is right. So Varys leaves, so I guess they're enemies now. Meanwhile, Bronn teleports in from King's Landing with his crossbow to kill Tyrion and Jaime. Then he talks to them and he leaves. I'm not kidding. They offer him a bribe and he just accepts it and walks right out of the scene like nothing happened. What the fuck did Cersei think was gonna happen when she sent the world's most unreliable assassin to kill 2 people he'd already fought beside? A man who will literally sell his services to the highest bidder at the drop of a hat? God's sake. So it's time for our heroes to plan their grand strategy to win the war. Because if the last episode's anything to go by, these are some of the finest military tacticians the world has ever produced. Go Cavalry! Anyway, they've lost about half their troops in the battle against the White Walkers. Wait, what? Half? Really? Because the last I saw, the only people still alive when Arya took out the Night King were wearing plot armor so thick you could build battleships out of it. The White Walkers had all but captured Winterfell and annihilated the defenders, and you're telling me half the Unsullied were still alive? Like, where? How? What the fuck were they doing? Maybe they went for a quick Starbucks or something. So Dany wants to assault King's Landing right away because that's totally something you could do. Like, moving troops hundreds of miles in the middle of winter with no mechanized transport is no problem whatsoever now. God's sake. Sansa wants to give their troops a chance to rest and recover before they fight another battle, but Dany gets her way and off they go. So their plan is for Jon to head south on the King's Road and Dany to take her fleet to Dragonstone for, reasons. Whatever. Anyway, the Hound heads south as well to have a nice big bowl of Clegane, and Arya goes with him because there are still a few plot threads she hasn't completely Rian Johnsoned yet. So Dany's on her way to Dragonstone with her dragons, and she's enjoying the view and thinking about her next Starbucks when Euron Greyjoy teleports his fleet in to intercept them. He kills one of the dragons and sinks half of Dany's fleet with ballistas, and he takes Missandei hostage. Oh no, a complete nothing burger of a character that nobody cares about. Sure hope nothing happens to her at the end of the episode. What the fuck? How did you not see that enormous fleet of warships from hundreds of feet in the air, Dany? How the hell did they manage to hit a dragon moving at like 200 miles an hour from half a mile away? How the fuck did Euron even manage to get there so fast? Like, this show has given up even pretending to care about the logistics and the dimensions of its own world. Characters and huge armies can just be wherever the writers need them to be with a snap of their fingers. Guess they leveled up enough to unlock fast travel. And why didn't Dany have the brilliant idea to fly around behind Euron's fleet and attack them from the rear where they wouldn't be able to target her with the ballistas? Then she could have just flamed away to her heart's content. But no, she has to avoid the simple logical solution the same way Amy Schumer avoids original stand-up material and run away so the episode's dumbass plot can actually play out. God's sake. Meanwhile, at Winterfell, Jaime leaves and heads to King's Landing because he suddenly decides he's still loyal to Cersei and he'd do anything and kill anyone for her. I have no words. 8 seasons of character development to turn him from a vain, arrogant, incestuous arsehole into a wise and compassionate man willing to set aside his personal loyalties for the greater good. And this is what they do with him? All that work undone so the writers can shove him in there for the finale. Anyway, so this shitfest wraps up when Dany shows up at King's Landing with like 50 men and demands that Cersei surrender. And Tyrion's there to do the negotiating, even though he has absolutely no reason to trust Cersei at this point. But she says no anyway, and she kills Missandei, and Dany storms off in the huff. And Cersei just lets her go, even though she outnumbers Dany by like 100 to 1, and she has ballistas and archers and God knows what else trained on her. Enough firepower to wipe out Dany's entire force and her dragon in a matter of seconds, and effectively end the war right there and then, and Cersei lets her walk away. God's sake. It's hard to know where to start with my complaints about this episode, whether it's the magically teleporting armies that can be anywhere the writers need them to be at any time, the characters that have suddenly forgotten their own personal histories, the clumsily telegraphed changes of loyalty, or the blatant, shocking and constant lapses in common sense. All of the shittiness merges together into some festering mire of mediocrity that pulls the entire show down, and it's kind of sad to see it happen. You can tell the writers are really trying to push this episode as a pivotal moment, where characters' destinies are ultimately decided by their own choices, and their paths are kind of set from this point, because the writers say so. Everyone has a choice to back down and avoid conflict at the cost of sacrificing something important to them, but they all refuse. Jon makes this decision to tell his family his true parentage against Dany's wishes. Arya decides to go to King's Landing to Rian Johnson the place. Cersei decides not to surrender when she has the chance. And Tyrion decides to support Dany even though her judgment's starting to fail her. They want to set this up as the final act of some epic tragedy where characters are ultimately undone by their own inherent flaws and weaknesses, like Jon's naive belief in truth and justice, Arya's loss of humanity and fatalistic attitude to life, Cersei's pride and ego refusing to let her surrender power, Tyrion's desire to believe in someone after being disappointed his whole life. Nice themes if you actually have the writing ability to bring them into the story with skill and intelligence, but Weiss and Benioff have already proven those are two things they no longer have. Looking back, maybe they never did. Take Tyrion, for example. He's been betrayed and screwed over by Cersei more times than Thor's been let down by Loki, yet he still seems to think he can negotiate with her. I mean, she even sent some asshole to kill him in this very episode. Why the hell would he put himself within 10 miles of her when he knows she'd have absolutely no issues with killing him? The Tyrion from season 4 never would have taken a risk like that, but then everyone's a bit different these days. The thing that really drew me into Game of Thrones was that it always came across as a show that managed to stay one step ahead of the audience. Unless you read the books though, obviously. It was smart, it was brutal, it was complex, and most of all it was unpredictable, and not in a bad way. You always felt there was a hidden intent and meaning behind everything that happened. Every character had some hidden agenda that was never quite revealed. Every plot thread felt like it was part of some rich and complex tapestry that would ultimately provide the most satisfying and thought-provoking payoff imaginable. But ever since the series ran out of book material to copy and paste into its screenplays, it's been on a slow but inevitable downward trajectory. And with the end in sight, everyone's finally coming to the same realization. There's no actual purpose to any of it. It's all smoke and mirrors. The characters which once seemed so smart and complex have gradually been dumbed down and simplified to their most basic elements. The patient, nuanced and labyrinthine plotlines which promised so much ultimately delivered so little, and the underlying theme of petty political squabbling between different factions gradually being superseded by an epic, world-threatening conflict between life and death itself has been literally killed stone dead. Humanity putting aside its differences and finally uniting in the face of an existential threat means nothing. Character development and personal growth means nothing. World building and physical reality means nothing. Tactical planning and seizing priceless opportunities means nothing. Now what do we have left? One dumb, selfish character fighting to take the Iron Throne from another dumb, selfish character, while a third dumb, boring character looks on from the sidelines. And in between are a bunch of other dumb supporting characters that are ultimately going to have to come down on one side of the conflict or another. What a waste. Weiss and Benioff should be ashamed of what they've done here, because what they've done is provide 8 seasons of tantalising setup only to fuck the payoff, and in turn fuck the audience that made this show into the juggernaut it's become. No wonder Rian Johnson enjoys this show so much. A lot of people are angry at the direction the show's gone, but to be honest, I can't even summon up an emotion like that. Ultimately, watching Game of Thrones now is like throwing up on a stripper in the middle of a private dance because you had one tequila slammer too many. You don't really feel angry, you just feel disappointed. And that's all I have for today. Go away now.